The skies are supposed to clear before a visiting head of state arrives, and they did just that as President Kennedy's big 707 jet touched down at Uplands Airport. As the visit to Ottawa began, 1,500 dignitaries and ordinary citizens were on hand to greet the president and his wife. Several hundred children of Air Force families waved Canadian and American flags and cheered themselves hoarse. The president, as head of state, was first off, followed closely by Mrs. Kennedy. The president was greeted in the name of the Queen by the Governor-General, and then a warm handshake between Mrs. Kennedy and Madame Vanier, and greetings from Prime Minister and Mrs. Diefenbaker. General Vanier later extended a special welcome to Mrs. Kennedy for what he called the smile, the elegance, and the beauty of their common French heritage. Prime Minister Diefenbaker welcomed the president as a world leader and ally and as a continental companion. Their talks, he said, would start from basic and shared principles of freedom and from the need for a strong defense while seeking peace. Mr. Diefenbaker said he had decided to read his brief statement in French. For President Kennedy, who also intended to speak in both languages, that was the signal for a departure from his original text.
I am somewhat encouraged in saying a few words in French from having had a chance to listen to the Prime Minister. It's an unfortunate division of labor that my wife, who speaks so well, should sit there without saying a word while I get up and talk. Ce voyage est le premier que je fais hors des États-Unis depuis mon élection à la présidence de mon pays. Et il est juste que c'est au Canada, le plus ancien de nos voisins et l'un de nos amis les plus chers.
Thousands of people lined the route to Government House, where the Kennedys are guests of the Governor-General. Thousands more watched the next day when the president laid a wreath at the National War Memorial, visited the U.S. Embassy, and spoke to Parliament. The evening the Kennedys arrived, they took part in a ceremony at Government House that has become traditional with visiting heads of state. They strolled across the lawns to where 2 red oaks awaited their planting. The trees will join others planted by the Queen, Prince Philip, the Queen Mother, and President Eisenhower. The silver-plated shovels, like their predecessors, are never used again. Then a brief rest before a change into formal wear, a reception, and a state dinner. The reception line was a long one, as 500 people attended the reception. The Kennedys met cabinet ministers, privy council members, diplomats, religious officials, senior military officers, and their wives. Mrs. Kennedy wore a gown by Oleg Cassini of heavy white silk and a sleeveless belted overblouse set over a slim skirt. Mrs. Kennedy spoke fluent French to greet many of the guests. The dinner featured Arctic char and roast lamb, while a string orchestra from the Royal Canadian Signal Corps provided a musical background.